And welcome to Drupal Camp Atlanta 2010. It's good to see all you out here. It's a great turnout. Really like to see everybody supporting Drupal, getting out, learning, sharing. It's a really awesome thing. I'm glad that everybody's here. And I'm actually surprised that you all are here to hear what I have to say, because I figured if I propose a topic that's more advanced, that everybody would go, nah, I don't want to learn that. But apparently you do, so that's awesome. My name is Jeff Maxey. I'm a senior developer for Morris Digital Works in Augusta, Georgia. We currently work helping about 13 daily newspapers and a couple other publications have a web presence and using Drupal, and also allowing them to really interact with their local communities. And at the same time, not let the newspapers die. So Drupal's helping keeping them alive, especially when that business is so tough right now. So here we are. This is CCK for Code Junkies. If you're new to CCK and you have little knowledge about it, this might be over your head. So I just give you the forewarning right now. All right. Also, with really big, long, nasty link, thanks to a Path Auto module and the fact that I was being lazy this morning. This presentation, the slides that you'll see, will be available there. And also, once I'm done with it, I'll also have the code. So that will be showing as well, will be available, and plus some other examples. So feel free, and also you can come in and tell me how bad of a presenter I am.
Hey, you gotta go back. You go back.
Sorry. All right. Go ahead, just you can give me kind of a loud murmur when you got it all. All right. Okay. We're good to go on. So what we're going to be talking about here is using CCK's API and hopefully not having epileptic seizures due to a flashing screen. Using CCK's API, we're going to be able to create a custom field that's going to do a couple things. One, we're going to interact with a third-party service. In this case, it's going to be a search engine. To be able to, we're going to send it keywords, and it's going to send us back some results. We're also going to do something that's kind of cool of taking this data that we collect in the form and actually sending it to another Drupal site that's going to process it and give us back some embed code for our special media that we're creating. Also through here, we're also going to learn how CCK classifies its elements. It breaks them down between the, what's a field, what's a widget, how do they all interact together. And like I said, we're going to go through the whole API, and because we don't have that much time, we're going to cover the bare essentials that if you want to do this type of module, you need to have these functions. Otherwise, you will be running around trying to figure out what's going on. So, in the elements for this field, and this is going to be on a user node form, on a node form. We want to get a title. We're going to be getting photos actually from a gallery on a photo site. So we're going to need the ID for that gallery, so we can use that to get the photos and build a special show. We also want to be able to allow it to add some features links, so we can relate some other content to this content that we're creating. And then also we want to get some search engines stuff, so we need keywords and then a field that's going to be a list of checkboxes with results that we can actually just pick the ones that we only want to display. And also we're going to need a field that's going to accept the embed code that's going to be sent back from the other Drupal site we're going to be talking to. So just to go ahead and clarify some terms, CCK breaks things down basically into two main parts, the field and the widget. The field is basically a namespace and a container for this data. We are telling CCK and Drupal what our field is by name, and we're also describing how we're going to store this data. The widget is the interaction space. This is the front-facing area where we're actually going to get this data from a user. So we'll start looking at some functions. Or at least not in detail yet, but a quick overview. In the install process, when we're installing the module, we're going to be using the content notify function, which is going to be us telling CCK what to do during Drupal's install process. For our fields, we're going to be using hook field info, hook field settings, and hook field, which kind of, if you can tell, they're named pretty simply, so you can kind of guess what they're going to be getting into. For the widget, we're going to be using the hook widget info, hook widget settings, and hook widget. You notice the naming convention, apparently. And also, there is a miscellaneous hook that if you've read documentation on Drupal.org, this miscellaneous function is actually classified as optional, but as we're going to find out, it is actually very much required, because otherwise you will get the white screen of death and no PHP errors. So it's a hard one to track down. Also, we're going to be implementing AHA in this module, which is a Drupal special AJAX system. So these functions that we're going to need to, for this, we're going to need to implement hook menu to set some callbacks. And we're also going to need those callback functions. As you see, I say callback.js, but you can name it however you want. It's not specific. So let's go ahead. We're going to take a look at the installation functions. During Drupal's install process and uninstall process, it has 4 basic stages pretty much. The install, uninstall, module enable, and module disable, or just hook enable, hook disable, hook install, hook uninstall. And at these points, we are going to, normally in an install file, you're going to be using Schema API to declare how your data is going to look in the database. We don't have to do that at this point because we're going to let CCK do that for us. So we're working with the module. It's doing the brunt of the work. We're just telling it what to do. So as you'll notice, I'm using Drupal load to pull in the content module, the CCK's core module, to pull it in so that its functions are available to us. And then we're using content notify to say that, hey, I have this field. This is what stage that Drupal's in. Do your thing. And we go through each of that for each 4 of these stages. And this, each of these is required. So you want to make sure you have those. Otherwise, your data won't save properly. Or if you uninstall it, you'll have dead data just sitting in your database that you'll have to manually go in and get out. So now the hook field info, we are basically just telling Drupal and CCK about our field. And we're giving it we're just going to be returning an array that's keyed by the machine readable name. And inside, we give it the basic information, our label, the human readable name, and maybe a quick description so people know what we're doing. Now the hook field settings there is divided mainly into 3 parts. And these parts are the more important, so we're going to be discussing these. It has an op parameter that you receive, and you'll use these 3 operations. Form, which is going to be creating a special settings form in the field. So if you ever know when you're adding a field to a node type, sometimes some fields have special settings that are global to the field widget, and we can create our form there. Also save, we can declare, when Drupal's saving the node, we can declare any special actions, or actually, apologize, step back. When we're saving the form configurations, we have a point where we can do any extra work with the data. So CCK is going to go ahead and store your settings, but we can also have a chance to do anything special with it before CCK puts it in the database. And then we have the database columns. Here is actually where you're going to define how your data is going to look in the database. And if anybody that has used the Schema API, we're going to be doing the same exact thing, except instead of doing it in the .install file, we're doing it in the module file, in this function. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples of this in code. here we're looking at the case form. This is inside the switch. I split the code apart because it all wouldn't fit in one slide without being very tiny. So we split it apart. Here we're just using basic Drupal form API to generate our settings form. In this case, I'm declaring some specifics. The domain of the Drupal site that we're going to be sending our data to create special content. We're declaring the search engine name that we're going to use. And then also an API key that we get from that special Drupal site has that we use just to identify ourselves and not have bad data. Now we look at the save function. You'll see here that I'm adding some fields. I'm adding this data, creating some of my own fields in the variables table because I want to be able to access them later through a different method, as opposed to only being able to get to it during certain stages of CCK. I set those in the variables table just so I can get them whenever I need to. And then the array I'm returning is telling CCK which fields that I'm saving, and it'll look at the data that from the form we created in the previous slide, and it'll go grab that data from the post and put it in the database for us. Now we're looking at the database columns. This one's a whopper because we're actually going to have a lot of elements in this field. So when you're declaring this data in the database, you're going to declare a column for each element in your form. So if you're going to have 5 elements in your form, you need to declare a column for each and exactly how it's going to look. Now, one key that we're going to notice here, and we're going to revisit later, is that you'll see in the array key is 1, the title of the column, and 2, it is going to be the exact same name that we give it when we actually start building our form that's going to go in the node. So remember this, that key that we're using, we're going to use that again and again and again. And if the name changes, our data gets lost. So now we're looking at that, we're getting back to that miscellaneous function. This is CCK is not a big fan of null values, and it will puke on you if you send it one. So and that's why I said even though this is optional, it's actually required. So at this point, as you can see, I'm just returning a blank array because I have other functions where I'm actually handling the data. So just to make CCK happy and get off my back for a second, I'm going to just give it a blank array instead so it doesn't get a null value. So this is very key, this function, you need it. Otherwise, like I said, you'll get a white screen and you won't figure out what happened. So we're about to break through. We're getting into, as soon as we go over hook fuel, we're about to get into some really fun stuff. In this, I will make a note about this. This is from documentation I got from Drupal.org, and Merlin actually mentions in some parts that this is left over from Drupal 5. So you can see that he's apparently been a little bit busy, and the other maintainers haven't updated the documentation. But the function's still the same in CCK for Drupal 6. But you do have a lot of different options that you can use. And these are same options that you would see like in Hook Node API. So you can do things with your data at any point in the node's life cycle. And these are delete revision, insert, load, prepare translation, pre-save, sanitize, update, and validate. Because I don't have any special operations that I need to perform, I'm actually using the sanitize operation because before I want to be able to get the data that's coming in, and before it gets saved, I want to be able to clean out any bad characters that sometimes silly users just throw in there. So I want to make sure that's clean because this data is going to go to another site, and I don't want it to get messed up and then, the whole process dies. So now we're getting into the widget. We're about to get into some really fun stuff. Hook widget info. We're just declaring some basic things, letting CCK and Drupal know about our widget, and we're giving it a name. And we're going to tell it the field type. So we're going to tell it what types of fields that it can go in, because we can actually make this widget available for other types. So we have a field that's in this instance, are calling it the coral field, which is short for correlate. Or we could declare that it can also go under integer or text, so it can be available there too. In the drop-down box when you're adding a field to a content type, this is where that's going to appear. So right now we're declaring that we're putting it in the coral field, so it's a subset of that field. And we're also looking at the multiple values and the callbacks. We're just pretty much letting CCK that we don't have anything special that we need to do with it. You do your thing, and that makes our life a little bit easier. So, hook widget. This is where the fun happens. This is where we actually get to create our form. And we're and this is where we're going to build how we're going to interact with our user and create our aha elements and really create something awesome. And actually, as I see at the bottom, time to put on your shinobi shosku, which is the traditional ninja garb. So it's time to get to some real code. And I got to switch to my text editor because it was too big to fit on the slide. All right, here we are in the hook widget. Can everybody read that okay? I had to switch the color layout because I usually have a black background and it doesn't show up too well in the projector, so I had to switch it around. So just make sure everybody can read that. So here we're actually building our form. When we see this code up here, that'll make sense here in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and roll down to our form where we actually start building our form. Now, with anybody that is familiar with the Form API, you know that you can literally create field sets, and in multiple levels of the form array, you can really group your stuff well as very customizable. Here, single level only. You cannot create a field set and put your elements inside of it. It won't work that way. CCK is looking for the single level in the array, and it'll take those and create a field set for you. So that's one thing. If you don't do that, you will wonder, where are my form elements? Why isn't it rendering them? It's because you need to have them at a single level only. And the rest of it, as we're taking, if we look at here, the data is going to come back under items. And it's under a delta because, as you remember, you can have multiple values within the same node for a field, so it can repeat itself. So this is where your default values are going to come from. And as you can see, I'm just making sure that it's there, or I can return my own default data. So I'm creating my fields. I've got my text field for the title. I've got my text area that's going to allow me to get a collection of URLs on separate lines. I have my keywords for the that's going to go to the search engine. And also, and then I have here, I'm creating my AHA generate element. How many people are familiar with AHA, have worked with AHA? Okay. AHA is a cross between a headache, magic, and adding some really great functionality. There are a lot of different options for that, but I can talk about it later, but getting into it now, might slow us down. So we're kind of taking it as given, but we understand that we did create this path and hook menu, and it's going to go to that Drupal path, and our PHP will fire off. We have our search results. Our search results is going to be an array, which is a set of checkboxes. Anybody who's familiar, as you know, checkboxes exist in two arrays. One is your options, and one is your values. These are going to be dynamic because we don't know what the user is going to type in to the search result, into the keywords. So I'll show you how we deal with that, and it's a little, it'll bend your mind. We have the gallery ID and the event ID. These are from the photo galleries that we're going to be trying to pull in and use. We also have these. This is kind of a special thing that I put in here. You can actually ignore this. We're actually not using it. It's just kind of left over from when I was working on this module. And then we have here, this is our generate. This is going to fire off sending all this data that we collected in the forms above, sending it off to the other site, and it's going to put it in these two fields here, which are two text areas. And I have them disabled because I don't want the user to be able to edit the data that gets sent back. Otherwise, they may screw up the embed code and cause a problem. So the less we can let users do, the safer our content is. And as well, I just mentioned, this is our delete function, because we also want to be able to have the option to be able to remove the data. Because we can't erase it because I disabled the field, we have an aha thing that'll remove it. And it'll also ping the other site and say, we're not using this anymore, so you can remove that as well. So let's go, sorry, we're looking at the, we're going to get the search results. Here we go. This guy right here, this is our implementation of this is the callback that's going to fire off when we send the search results. So first, because technically this form doesn't exist, we need to stop having a seizure, like for real. We need to grab our items from the post. So we're going to pull it in, get the post, get our form ID. We're going to grab this form out of cache because Drupal has forms exist in two different places at once. What do you call it? Schrodinger's form. And we're going to pull it in and rebuild the form so that now we have that data that they posted from the keywords. We're going to send it off. Down here. That's where are you at? Here we go. We're going to let's just submit. My coffee's worn off now. There we go. So we're going to go through. We're going to get. We're going to go to the search engine. We're going to send it our URL. We're going to send it our request. And we're going to bring back. I'm actually using a different parser. Actually, this guy right here helped write too. We're going to parse the data. We're going to pull out the title and the URL. We're going to create our options array that's going to go back and appear in the form that the user can select from. So the user, at this point in the form, the user has gotten some search results, selected some search results. They've added their gallery ID, and now we're going to get all that stuff from them. We're going to send it over to the other Drupal site. So we're going to come down to pretty much this guy right here. Is we're going to take all this data, we're going to build a giant post query that we're sending to, and it's a big guy. Take all this post data, put it together into a request, and we're going to send it off to the other site. When the site's done processing that, it's going to send it back to us, an XML feed that has two things in it. One's going to be a basic anchor link with an image in it that we can use, and another one's going to be some embed code that's got a little bit of JavaScript in it that'll help open a child window and show our special content that we're trying to embed in our content. So now, I mentioned that it gets a little crazy when you're bringing the form elements back. I don't know if I can find that. I actually have to, normally when you're rendering the form, you use Drupal_render. Two form field types will not render for some reason with that, and it is a noted bug. Radio buttons will not render, and multiple checkboxes will not render. Single radio and single checkbox will render, but multi-value will not. So I actually have to do a roundabout kind of cheat using Drupal get form, which will render our elements to actually regenerate our form with the checkboxes. So you'll notice I go down here, I create our form, and I set it as a global because one, I was having a hard time to figure out how this data could be available. So I cheated. I used the global variable. And now, once we begin building our form, we're going back up to hook widget to explain that code that was at the top. I'm actually pulling back in those globals. And I'm rebuilding it. I'm also caching it by session ID so that I can have multiple users doing things and they won't clobber each other. Because otherwise, everybody will have the same search results if they're all doing it at the same time. So I store everything by session ID for that user. And of course, if the node's already been created and we have a node ID, I can now store them directly connected to the node. That's a little trickery. And then of course, after my form is rebuilt, my options will be there. That's an interesting noise. So we've built the base for this, and that's a lot of it. Which will be available to you guys so you can go through and read it and actually take the time to understand it, because there's a lot. We now have this data. We want to save it. CCK handles that for us. So with that said, I think it's time for a live demonstration of this beast. Y'all ready for that? So you're looking at all the code, you're wondering like, I don't even. Let's actually see that this thing does actually work. And Savannah was actually gracious enough to let me demonstrate it to you in an actual real life implementation. This is they actually use this live every day. So we're going to go ahead and do a full demonstration of how this works, creating a node from the bottom up. So first, I need to grab some random text. Hey, look at that. So we're going to get the Beast demo. It's like random. Give us some dummy data. And here we are right here. This is our Beast. This big guy right here. So we're pulling in. I picked a gallery. I like cycling, so I found these guys that they're being crazy in Texas, riding their bikes and wearing silly hats. So I want to display them. So I've already gotten the gallery ID for this, just to save the time, so you don't have to watch me go through that process. So we got a guy, they're crazy bikers with funny hats. I'm going to add in relate some content to it, so I'm going to do some mindless self-promotion. So, we got some guys, let's find some other stories of cycling. So we want to get find out some more stuff about cycling. There we go. So, let's see. Cycling boss criticizes U.S. investigation. Steroid cop shows, there we go, because the guy who won the Tour of France apparently cheated using some steroids. I mean, you might as well play for the MLB. So we're going to select some stories. I'm going to add in my gallery ID, which I found. 228. We're relating it to sports. We've got all that. Now let's go send it off and get some content back. It takes a second because we're waiting for the other site to create the node and save it and send us back our stuff. There we go. And as you see, I just pulled in some JavaScript for embed code, and then also just a simple image link. So with that said, let's save it, see what our node looks like. All right. So now we demonstrated the Beast. This is our image link that came up. It automatically, we have that built into our theme, so it automatically appears in the side. And we have our content. And now we can actually, because it's connected, we can actually see what the node that the other site created. And we can pull up a slideshow. And it's kind of funky. This is actually running off a dev site, so there's still some little creaks in it. But we got our gallery. We got 100 photos. Wow, I didn't know there were that many. Here's my mindless self-promotion link that got sent over. And we can browse through photos. So that's the Beast, as I nicknamed it. We've created this field that can interact with actually 3 different third parties with our site, and create some enhanced content for us, and very simply put it right into our content. And the user, and it's one single field that has a lot of options, and it makes it really easy to do some enhanced content on the site. So, I guess that kind of wraps it up. So I'm going to go ahead and open up, let you guys ask questions. So feel free. Anything you would like to ask me. He asked if the code will be available before on the site, the link that I showed on the second earlier at the beginning of the session. Yes, I will have this code available. Actually, I'll probably try to do it shortly after I sit down and maybe have another donut. So yes, it will be available. Also, the video will, from here and any pictures I'll also make available. So I took a couple shots out here so you can see yourself on the internet. So, any other questions?
You can just go back to the content type.
Say that again, louder.
There's a look at your content type. Yeah.
Oh, see how it looks when you're actually adding it into the node, to the content type?
Correct.
Sure. Well, actually, he asked, can I show what this looks like when you're actually adding it to a content type in the CCK's backend? Definitely. So when you're adding it to a field, I actually have it set in this node type here. As you can see, I created it here. This is it. And also when you add it, or adding a new field, we have, the way I describe it shows up as Coral POE. I call it, it's what I refer to as point of entry, because it's literally, from the other side, I literally recreated a node form from that different Drupal site and was able to embed it inside another node form so that they could create content on two Drupal sites at the same time. And then here's the widget that we created, and we made it available inside of this field set here. Also, to go in the settings form that we talked about. Here we have this is the form I created inside of hook field settings, so that I can get some special data. And I had I put my search engine. I pointed it to the other Drupal site, dubbed Relator. Or Relator, that's actually what I call it. And then, of course, the API token. Any other questions? Did that satisfy your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can you go back to the page where the post actually occurred and see where the related articles show up?
The related articles that I selected?
Right.
Okay. Actually, no, I think it may have cheated you because I was playing with the theme. They would normally appear in this rail.
Right.
This is a project that I'm currently working on, so you may have commented it out in the theme. So I'm very sorry that I couldn't demonstrate that to you. So, but otherwise they would appear under featured stories in the same list that you selected them as, using the same style. So yeah, I did show you a work in progress, so it kind of missed out. So I apologize for that. Any other questions? All right. Well, that pretty much sums it up. And so, and you know, if you don't feel like asking questions in front of a whole bunch of people, and and you're shy like that, you can find me walking around, and you can ask me any other questions. And I'll pretty shortly after here, I'll have the code available. so you guys can play with it, try it out yourself. I also have some other examples of doing things very similar to this, and a couple of blog posts on my site, so you can check those out. Or you can just poke around. Thank you very much, guys. You're great.